Welcome to CPG Brand Builders, and I'm excited because if you love coffee, which most of us do, you want to really see, well, what's the industry like? What's marketing like in a very competitive, very unique market with commodity pricing happening, with consumer behavior changing? In the category, what I've seen is that specialty coffee is growing at 10% compounded annual growth rate for the next 5 years, which is phenomenal growth. And so with me today is Ben Miller. And Ben, I'm going to read out your bio because it's great. So you're the Director of Business Development and Market Expansion at Level Ground. So where you shape how premium specialty coffee connects with grocery partners and consumers across Canada, backed by more than 10 years experience across business development, marketing, and sales. Ben brings a strategic approach to scaling brands, driving revenue, and strengthening customer relationships. And outside of work, he enjoys riding his motorcycle and exploring the BC outdoors. So welcome, Ben, to CPG Brand Builders.
Awesome. Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Well, give us a little bit of background. Like, how did you end up in coffee at Level Ground? What's kind of like your bit of your backstory?
Yeah, for sure. I've been in marketing for quite a few years now in just a wide variety of different industries. Everything from like hearing aids and protection to outdoor adventure parks. Worked in that industry for quite a few years. And I think CPG is really where I've found what I like. I like a challenge, and so constantly having to iterate and change and look at the market kind of brings that excitement for me. So yeah, I've been in the CPG space for almost 7 years now, which sounds a little bit crazy, but yeah, a lot has changed since I started and joined into that.
Oh, absolutely. Now, tell us a little bit about the coffee category. You now have lots of experience. What is that category like, and how do you kind of view even your product mix and how you approach it?
Yeah, coffee is very competitive. Um, I often talk about how there's different like tiers of coffee that people consume within, and often they don't necessarily jump from one to the other. You have your Folgers drinkers or the canned coffee pre-ground, ready to go that people have had for a long time, and that's kind of that entry tier into coffee, and then as you level up, you get into the space that we play, which is second wave coffee. So, more premium, organic, fair trade, ideally, all of these great attributes, a lot more flavor that you get to consume as part of it. And lots of competition in there. Barrier to entry to being a coffee roaster is fairly low. And you see that in the third wave, which is one beyond that, which is your cafes and your
Mm.
premium, like ultra premium coffees, really light roasts, fruity, juicy flavors in that. And so, our goal being in the second wave is really to try and bring that really great coffee and make it accessible to kind of others within that space. You want to level up your day-to-day game. You want to, have a better cup of coffee. Well, we can provide that at a accessible price point.
Yeah, totally. Now, how many SKUs do you guys have in your portfolio?
In grocery, 19. So a lot of those have come from just history. We've added and we've added and we've added because more shelf space, if you can't get it across multiple facings, can come from multiple SKUs.
Yeah.
But that has its own challenge in it as well.
So so when you guys are sitting there thinking you've got 19 SKUs,
Yeah.
do you guys have a strategy of different SKUs for different retailers? When do you add them? When do you take them away?
Yeah, great question. So we're always looking at data, and that'll be probably a theme that I talk about a lot is, what's performing, what's not, and what are consumers looking for and what aren't they. And so I'll talk about the Canadian market mostly, but preferences change from east to west coast drastically. And so the SKU mix really does help us target what people are actually consuming. I find the more that you go towards Eastern Canada, the more you're seeing darker coffee roasts. And so we have SKU set that fits really well with that. And it allows us, as we expand into grocery stores, look at what do we think is going to be the most successful? What's the right mix of bean and ground? What's the right mix of dark, medium, very dark, even in our French roast, that's going to be the most successful? And so data helps us build that list out, but the SKU set of that, 19 SKUs really helps us kind of dial in on what's going to be the most impactful.
Totally. And then when you see consumer trends, so you kind of mentioned that what consumers are looking for, innovation always comes up, and marketers were always thinking, okay, how do we get into that? Like, how do you approach innovation for yourself? And
Yeah, uh, innovation. Well, the context is that ground has been around for almost 30 years. Next year's our 30-year anniversary.
wow,
So, we've had a lot of opportunity to grow and try new things, but really within the last 7 years, we've shifted our focus even more so onto innovation. So we started what we call the Innovation Lab, and that's kind of our internal team that can go off and explore all these different, whether it's formats or blends or totally new out there products that live in the coffee or caffeine space, without any issues, right? The idea is that we can create a business case, we can try different products, we can see if there's a fit, we can test it against market data, and build it into this nice little package and see if there's a fit for consumers. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. I mean, I'd say maybe 90% of the time no, but that's part of the process of innovation, at least for us, is to test, see what's there, explore what's happening at trade shows and events and all across the world
yeah.
to see, where is the next thing that maybe we could bring to Canada or the US that just doesn't exist yet, because that's what grocers want. I
Totally.
find, the first two questions every time I meet someone at a trade show is, hey, what's new and why you? So if you can have an answer for that, then amazing.
Yeah, that's it is neat. Now, have you guys ever, you guys looking at ready to drink, cold brew? Like, I know those are taking off right now. It's like, at what categories do you look at jumping into or kind of exploring a little bit? Which ones you're like, you know what, we're not even gonna go touch that.
Um, I guess all of the above is where it starts, and then we kind of narrow it down. I talk about cold brew. I've always really wanted to create a cold brew, so that's maybe a personal project. I love nitro cold brew. It's my favorite way to consume coffee for sure. But shipping liquid is expensive. And that's kind of the first barrier that I run into when I come across something like that, is trying to figure out the logistics to how can I bring it to market at an accessible price point. Um, you know, Coffee costs have ballooned extremely over the last
Mm,
2 years. And so that makes it even more challenging to make a beverage and bring it to market in a way that it can become part of somebody's habit. The idea is that you're part of their daily ritual. And so that's really the goal in our innovation space, is like, can you get these repeat purchases? Can you kind of be part of somebody's daily routine
yeah. No,
with that?
you're fighting that positioning, or you can't, because the commodity price has increased. You can't. There's going to be a certain price barrier within grocery, within kind of mass merch, that you're not going to be able to go over. So that could definitely limit the
Absolutely.
options, right? For sure. Now, you kind of mentioned that the differences between East Coast or East Side, West Side, and the coffee drink, which is pretty cool. I actually didn't know that. Like, what other kind of
Yeah.
consumer behavior are you seeing then? Like, is there other kind of nuances that people would be really surprised to find out about consumers and how they drink coffee and how often they drink it? And
Yeah, definitely. There's so much information, so you can dive, as deep into it as you want. I think I'm a bit of a data nerd when it comes to that, so I could probably talk all day. So I'll try and give the sparks notes of kind of what it is. But we looked at everything from like what type. So there's a few different categories, like what type of consumption are they doing? Is it single serve? Do they have a brewer at home? We're finding younger consumers are looking for those ready to drink or easily accessible items as their first kind of foray into coffee. Um, and we find that once somebody's selected a type of consuming, like a way to consume the beverage, they're not necessarily going to shift. So it's up to us whether we want to create a product that fits into that market, or if the market's large enough for us to fit into. Again, speaking of the like west to east coast kind of Canada side, you know, the more in Ontario and Quebec and that area, we're finding that instant and single serve is very, very popular,
Hmm.
um, because that's just how it's very convenient for you to grab a cup of coffee on your way out the door. And because people are so cost conscious right now, having a way to have an alternative for a coffee shop as part of your daily routine is a really kind of great way to address that.
Yeah, that's really neat. Is there, so you are seeing a difference between consumers that are younger versus say older demographic, and do you see that in just in terms of the whole bean consumption, the trends within that, or is it more the younger side is more the convenience, grab and go, that don't want to do the whole ritual stuff as much?
Uh, Seeing it in a few different ways. So again, speaking a bit about the history, is like we started really with this main focus on bringing fair trade coffee to Canada, and over time, fair trade, which is a good thing, has become more of a point of parity rather than differentiation. Right? More brands have taken that on, which is great. It helps farmers and it helps the economy in that way. So very good, but it means that also it's a time for us to adjust how we market into grocery. So we did make that change a few years ago. We did a brand update at a 25-year-old company, which
Yeah.
is a little bit terrifying. But we really looked at that stage. What are people buying? Who is buying the most? In our existing kind of SKU set, that bean and ground, because that's the opportunity for us at that time.
Yeah.
Um, and that gave us this nice age range and these nice personas that we could kind of go after and market to and learn from.
Right, and not feel like you're an imposter with it. It actually feels like it fits and stuff. Um,
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Now you mentioned data research. Like what kind of resources? Like if you're a brand right now and you're a marketer looking at this, like what are those databases and research that you use or you look at that you think, you know what, this is actually a really good tool. This might be a really good thing. Anything that you're seeing right now?
Yeah. I think the closer you can get to the actual till purchases, the better. And the more you can see in your category, the better as well. So we've bought Nielsen data in the past. That's been great for us. Obviously, we still buy that. IRI slash Circana, we buy that as well, which gives us kind of the hot beverages category as a whole info. So I can go and look at competition or companies that are playing outside of our current product mix and say, hey, how is that going? Or is decaf on the rise or falling, right? I can see the data of our own SKU set, but I can see how it's going elsewhere to start to predict what issues we need to address for consumers. So that's one of the resources as well. And then I say, anytime that we're talking about brand changes, I think anytime you can connect with consumers or do any focus groups and things like that, the amount of information we get out of that is so valuable
Oh
because
yeah.
I'm always surprised about what we learn and what areas consumers see that maybe we haven't thought of or I haven't thought of.
Now, the one thing I always felt was really unique with Level Ground, and I've got another client too that actually opened up their own retail store,
Mm,
and they get a lot of that real life data kind of coming back. You guys have your own, your own kind of coffee shop. Like, do you find that's been helpful connecting with consumers that way? Is that like, how's that been?
yeah, it's great. I mean, our coffee shop's both a marketing aspect and it's a consumer research side. So it gives us a chance to try different things, different products. I mean, even right now we have, I think it's two espressos on the bar that you can try between just to see the difference in flavor profile. And it's how we did our most recent product launch, actually, came out of the cafe. So we had a Roasters Series coffee, and we had developed this espresso just for the cafe because we thought it was so good and, people were going to like it. And everyone kept asking, hey, can I have it? Can I buy it? And we're like, oh, sure, you know what? Yeah, we'll put it on the shelf in the cafe. And then it was selling so well that we're like, let's take a look again at how this fits into the market. We had an espresso 10 years prior and discontinued it.
Hmm.
And then we're like, okay, it is growing. Let's reintroduce it. And so the cafe really does become this kind of area that we can risk-free explore in taste and flavor
Yeah.
for consumers.
Yeah, I like that. And does the cafe actually make money? Like, is it because like some people might be thinking like, "Oh, I can't just open that, like, or is it like actually it's actually a break even or whatever it is, and you actually can leverage it? Do you leverage that story with retailers when you go to them and say, "Hey guys, we've been selling this at our retail shop and it's been flying. We think you could do it."
Yeah, we definitely talk about how well it does in the cafe. It's also a really good spot for people to come and try. So we will bring, like, if a retailer is able to come to us, it's a really good space that we can show. It's an
Oh
awesome
yeah.
cafe if anyone gets the chance to come to it. But, we'll do coffee tasting flights. We'll be able to really kind of dive deep into the coffee knowledge in the cafe. Um, but it's super accessible. Our goal there isn't necessarily to run profit through it. It's to allow people to taste our coffee.
Yeah.
It originally was called the tasting room. Now it's called the cafe, because it gets a bit confusing with wine. But it was the coffee tasting room, and yeah, the drinks are very reasonably priced. And the idea is that, yeah, anyone can come and try it out.
Yeah, I love that. That's awesome. Now, Level Ground competes in a premium category, right? You're wave two,
Yes.
you're in that premium category. The pricing of coffee is increasing. The economy, we're seeing that consumer discretionary spending is down. How have you found that for your own brand, and what tactics are you like? Have you been looking at and using to be able to address it?
Yeah, we have a few things on our side that help with that. Definitely the company history helps. We have a lot of relationships directly with farmers in sourcing, so that allows us to get the best kind of coffees at the best price and bring those through because we've worked with them for years, both in when coffee's been great and good times and when it's been cheap and we're really helping invest back into the community. So that's a big asset that we have as a company and that history that's there. On shelf though, with price, consumers are very price minded right now. Our package size is another huge asset for us. We're a 300-gram package, which allows us to enter the shelf price or basket size or basket price, sorry, at something that's very reasonable, right? Nobody's wanting to spend 30% of their weekly grocery budget on coffee, but
Mm.
when you get into 10%, it's a little less painful. So our goal is with that, you may buy it more frequently, but it is accessible at that stage. So we're both trying to source in a really great way that gives back to farmers, but also brings less expensive coffee at a great taste. And then the smaller package size definitely gives us an edge on shelf.
You know what? I think that format size to be able to hit a right price point is such a great strategy. Now, not everybody
Yeah,
can just do that right away. Like you can't just all of a sudden change
it's a
it. So
difficult change.
for you guys to do that already is probably a huge advantage.
Yeah, it was actually our original package size way back. So we reintroduced all the UPCs because we didn't want all that historic data there. But we relaunched it a few years back, and yeah, the timing worked out really well with the increase in price in coffee, and just working with all of our partners to see where we can uh, reduce costs and give that back to the consumer in terms of price breaks.
Oh, totally. I love that. Um, so one of your roles, you work a lot with the retailers in the business development side, and I've always felt like marketing to be able to execute well in CPG, you have to be able to work with sales teams effectively. So what advice would you give marketers to how to work with retailers, how to execute well at that retail level to ensure that you can just actually move the needle when it comes to sales?
Yeah, I mean, sales is always a tricky thing in CPG. The sales cycle is slower, than you typically would unless you're coming in with a really great new innovation that everyone's wanting to put on. But I think one is the amount of displays and touch points that you can have in a store are very important. Every time we're going in and negotiating or going on deal, the more places that you can find us in the store, the better. We're happy to also work with each location, kind of individually. It's not just like a set it and forget it strategy. Each retailer and sometimes each store, if we're working with independents, has their own stamp they want to put on things or their own way they want to put products out. And so I think listening is really, really important for the sales team, understanding what's going to work and what won't. You might have great ideas, but if it doesn't match what the grocer wants, then it's not going to be successful, even if you're able to push it through. So, yeah, definitely the multiple touch points is really valuable, at least for us. It's like, if I'm going on a buy one, get one free or something like that, can I be at the front of the store or can I have an end aisle display or can we put a bunch of shelf talkers on the end or a unique way of displaying product? And then, yeah, that's, the other kind of key fun thing that you can do as well is working with another brand. If there's a way to do some kind of cross promo,
Mm.
we found those relationships can be really, really valuable. Can you enter into somebody's new daily buying or weekly buying habit by working with an allied brand and you're both helping each other out. So that's
Totally.
another kind of secret sauce that I think not a lot of people take advantage of.
Well, especially with coffee, like what kind of categories would work well with coffee, do you think? Like what kind of cross
Uh,
things?
well, we have our own sugar, so that works well. We can kind of go into that cane sugar. But like oat milk would be a great example of one. It's like anything that people are using in allied products, tea, oat milk, sugar, any of those kind of pieces. I've seen other unnamed coffee brands even do things in liquor stores, right? Where you
Mm.
put coffee with Baileys or things like that, where it just adds a bit of fun to it, where someone might not think to see your product.
Yeah, totally. I think collaborations and working, it does take a little bit more coordination and effort, but man, it's such a
Yeah.
good thing. And you can sometimes either gain access to new consumers or even lower costs on your execution, within that, maybe share that with each other. So yeah, that's cool. I
Yeah.
like that.
And the more
Um,
tools you can provide to the sales team as well, the better, right? We talk about all the different assets you can create and put, but they're walking in and being in store, and the more they can say, "Oh, hey, this is new," or "have this new thing," the better. Constantly evolving and revolving into new kind of material helps as well.
what would be those if you had like a minimum toolkit that a marketer could
Yeah.
build for their sales team to say, don't worry about those things. I don't need those, but I really like these things that you were mentioning. Is it like shipper displays? Is it what would those be?
Yeah, anything that they can, well, shipper displays are great because it's a good way to get in the door for the first time. That's very low risk for the grocer. They can go in and put your product and trial it out, with not a ton of risk on it. We use a lot of sell sheets. We provide them with a lot of pre kind of number crunch data to show how we're performing in the market. Yeah, shipper displays. We use shelf talkers. We've had even like shelf blades created in the past, which are kind of a unique way to approach it. So I think even if you are providing this little toolkit to them, say of 5, 6 items that they can go and grab from their vehicle or have on them, that's a great starting point. It might mean that none of those actually get sold in store, but you've had a conversation. You're showing up as a innovative and ready to work with the store brand, and I think that's the best type of approach.
That's it. It's interesting that you say that because if you're like, even if it doesn't get executed, there's still a reputation and relationship within that. And I
Yeah.
guarantee nobody's really thinking that much about that. But yeah, it could be. Do you find that that would be helpful? Like even if you're like, hey guys, we got these shelf talkers, we got these blades, and the store's like, no, I don't want them. But they actually still like the fact that you're even bringing those solutions to them.
Yeah, absolutely. I have this phrase, and it's less applicable here, but it's like nobody wants to be sold anything, but everyone loves shopping with a friend, right? So if you can go in and you can be that person's there to help them succeed and build a relationship and be genuine, I think that's where you're gonna have the most success.
Oh, I love that. Totally. No, that's awesome. So brand promotional strategy, like that's a big thing. You mentioned it, and we got to see firsthand like a 25-year-old brand going through a rebrand, and not just like an update. It was like a complete
Yeah.
departure. What was that for you guys at the time? That decision to go ahead, and then the results from it? Because it was a big risk that ownership and yourselves made.
Yeah, it's we had seen kind of the writing on the wall, like we were saying before, that the consumers that were purchasing our product were extremely loyal, and they still are. Um, and that was starting to decline in sales. And so we knew that we needed to adjust to attract a different segment. And so that all started with, okay, how can we prove there is more opportunity for us to go after? There is a coffee market that we really fit well within, and let's see what that looks like. And so that was the initial piece, is pulling some data on us, our competitors, the coffee market as a whole, like where is the opportunity here? And it turns out there's a lot of opportunity in coffee. But that was kind of the driving force behind the, like, okay, change is required. We can do this in a way that honors the history and stays true still to the kind of core values of the company, because that's not changing. It's really just the how are we showing up to consumers in a way that makes them want to purchase the product and wants to invest in the brand or try us
Mhm.
for the first time. And so it was a long process because of us more than anything, but there's a lot of back and forth and a lot of growing pains that come from such a big change so far into kind of business. And so we tested assumptions, we ran consumer testing, we did many iterations, and some things that felt right at the beginning didn't necessarily at the end. And so we were able to get to this point where the confidence was there, both for the ownership group, but also for the sales team, which is equally as important, is that, hey, this product I have is just going to sell. And so they're excited to go out and put it into the market. And so data was a big backbone to making that be successful. The creative material turned out really, really well. Everything that we did tied both back to the origin and the beginning of how Level Ground is formed and where we source the coffee from, but also really to where we still roast and produce all these things now. And so it's just a fun parallel that still rings true today.
Yeah. And so what was it, just tell us about that first time you had a meeting with the buyer and you say, "Hey, here's our new brand." What was the
Yeah.
reaction? Like what was the conversation like?
It was so well received. I think we were very nervous, but everything was so well received. We created this really in-depth deck with a nice appendices for, okay, if stuff goes wrong and there's a lot of questions, we can reference this at any time. Um, but that wasn't the case. I think people were so happy to see this fresh new look for the brand. They believed in kind of why we do business and what the products stand for. And so to see us making these leaps forward with new look and color and all of these pieces really sat well with the buyers. And we have a lot of product pieces outside of the visual elements that add to that as well. Where our core values I talk about kind of ring true, and then it's zero to landfill, and we give back, all our waste chaff and things like that to gardeners and the community. So those pieces are still part of that core Level Ground that still rings true, or still, sits well with the buyer and the consumer. But now they're just seeing it in a way that they think will be successful with their consumers. I think the grocers are also seeing that the market is changing. That was actually uh, one of the lines on our deck, is like, the coffee market is changing, because it is, and consumers are taking in products in a different way. And so we were one of the firsts of many coffee brands to do this kind of brand refresher adjustment, and I think it's sat really well.
Awesome. And for somebody who's going through that process or thinking about it, what were some kind of key lessons in hindsight that you would say, "Oh, you know what? I would actually do this time," or maybe kind of think about that. Any kind of lessons or advice that you would give to a marketer?
Hmm. I think always, like, trust the process. It's never going to be an easy process. So just know that anytime you make a change, it will be difficult, but that's part of growing. And make sure you're just gut checking against, hey, does this sit true with how I want the company to feel, right? Internally, does this align with our core values and our mission and what we're going after? And is it hitting the need in the market with consumers? And if you're hitting both of those things with it, you're really well along the right track to having a successful launch. I think, yeah, trust the process for sure. And it will be probably longer than you think, and it may be more painful, but those pain points are really the key pieces to figuring out exactly what you want.
Yeah. And you know what, you had a really good point because in this process, an old brand, but sometimes you don't, it's okay to push back. It's okay to maybe go through, hey guys, we're just not hitting it right. Let's kind of work through this. Let's get some more and that's kind of even, I think even this process, I think we went through 3 rounds and we were like, no, just not hitting it, and sorry guys, we
Yeah.
feel bad. And then we, 3 new ones. And then even from there, it was like then refining that even further. So I think that's, I would say kudos to you because what you don't want to do is launch something that you don't absolutely love, that you believe in, that you think is hitting that mark. And I think that was a good lesson.
Yeah, totally. I think as soon as you gain that confidence and that comes through process, then you'll be successful in it. You want to be excited about the product. You want to know it's going to work as much as you can. And so that consumer testing and things like that are super important as well if you can. But yeah.
That's awesome. No, it's great. So everybody has this one was a successful relaunch, great brand. What's been something that has not gone well, and
Oh,
what did you learn from it?
I mean, yeah, there's constantly those things. I always say if you're not winning, then hopefully you're learning. There's always some of that. I mean, I try to think of examples to this, and it was a bit hard to kind of pick out one specific thing because we're always adjusting. But I can speak more in the adventure park industry. When I was in that side, it's like, one of the big learnings was trying to force a tactic that we had come together with into a market. And it just, everything seemed like this great idea. We are trying to sell, all these group experiences into schools, which was part of like, state funding at that time, and all these great ideas. The sales reps were going to go down and visit schools and all these things, and the teachers were very excited. And then we realized that you're not actually allowed to go into the schools without prior permission. And so we had all this stuff planned out, the material in place, all of these things, and it just wasn't something that was possible. We had this great idea, nobody was doing it, and we learned why nobody was doing it. And we found ways around it in the future for it, but it was that kind of like, okay, we really were trying to force something in that was just our idea, and we hadn't really checked of the, does this make sense? Is this possible? And the same kinds of things apply even as we look into the CPG space. Is like, we can have all these great brainstorming ideas, and I think for us it's important to check the, what does success mean? What does that look like, both in, quantitative or qualitative data, and how did it go? And so that was a pain piece for sure, and we worked through it. But I think now we get really specific about how we measure tactics. We used to measure things as part of the funnel, brand awareness, discovery, trial, loyalty, things like that. And we moved towards channels, and then calling out specific activities within it. And that allows us now to get a bit of a better marketing mix, but also every tactic has a cost and an expected result. And so
Yes.
everything's measured against, hey, what are we spending on it? Did we expect to go to a trade show and get 15 new leads? Oh, we got 5, or we got 40. It allows us to adjust our expectations and spend year over year over year. And so that's kind of the tools we build out of failing at stuff, because without trying, you can't, see what's new and explore that, but you need to know, was it successful or not?
Totally. No, I think that's great. So, what traits of a marketer then do you think are important in today's categories and today's marketplace? Like, what do you think that, for just what makes great marketing leadership?
Yeah, I mean, I think marketers need to be grounded but decisive. And I think more and more over time, data is becoming a useful skill set. So they need to be able to understand and interpret data as much or as little as you have, but not be paralyzed by it. Like I could spend all day in a spreadsheet analyzing every different little piece, but you need to be able to just use that to move on and be decisive and make decisions out of that. The CPG space can be super crowded, and there's lots of opportunity, and we can go all of these different ways. But great marketers really help either themselves or a team focus on what matters. And so I think that's really a big like skill set that I would look for is somebody who can kind of take all the fuzz and narrow it down into a strategy that they can go and execute on. Because if you think for 6 months of the year and only execute for 6 months of the year, you're wasting a lot of time. And a lot of done is better than perfect can be the case as long as you have a solid strategy in mind that you're following.
I like that. I think it's a great line. Say that again.
I can't remember what I said.
It's like more. And I think that there's a bias for action. Like it's better to keep executing as long as you have the right strategy than to be paralyzed and not execute enough. Is that kind of the gist of it?
Yeah, exactly. I think if you can use that focus and that strategy to help just keep pushing and executing into market, then that's going to be your best outcome. Otherwise, you're missing opportunity. Um, Especially as you look at a whole year going by, buyer decisions may happen only in a certain part of it. And if you're missing that because you're thinking about what is this exact one thing they're looking for, you may be missing the whole year. So,
Yeah.
making sure you get a good strategy, ignore a bit of the noise, and get some good focus. Yeah.
Totally. Very cool. So, what CPG brand do you think is killing it right now? When you look at what they're doing, you're like, oh man, they're doing such a great job. I love that.
I love watching everything in the CPG space. I think it probably annoys my wife more than anything because we go grocery shopping and I just wander the aisles staring at the shelves and
Oh yeah,
seeing
that's
what's
how you know
new.
you're a CPG marketer. That's how you're
Yeah,
in it.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, exactly. So I love seeing what's new. I'm always looking for like either new product or new like I don't want to say strategy, but people just doing stuff that maybe makes me feel a bit like less comfortable. Like, oh, is this working or not? So my one like product example I always fall back to is it's a place out of Calgary. It's actually another coffee roaster, and they have this product. I'm gonna call it the wrong thing, but I call it matchstick coffee because it's like instant coffee that comes in what looks like a little matchbox, and they're thin little strips of coffee. And I think it's just the best branded and executed product I've seen in a long time because it's designed, they have a whole coffee line, but this product's designed for like you're going off camping, you're going, for a
Interesting. Yeah.
hike, or you want this like single serve product. And it just feels so nostalgic and cool and fun. And I think, yeah, the branding on it is just like, it's perfect
Very
for
cool.
it. So I definitely look it up because I think it's just a fun product that exists in the market. And I had never seen anybody create or present instant coffee in that way. And so it's just
Yeah.
very unique. And then I always fall back to, I mean, maybe this is a year ago of midday squares. They're kind of like user generated content,
Mm.
more on the business side, actually, is what I'm talking about. Space is like, I'll be the first to say it usually makes me feel a little uncomfortable in it of the approach, but like a lot of their, say, LinkedIn or like grocer kind of content was focused so much on their journey as a company, showing the failures and the wins and the struggles as they started up. And I just thought it was such like I got so invested in like, oh, they got this new packaging machine, the package is wrong. I'm like, man, I feel that I've been there,
Yeah.
like all of these different challenges, but to get to something that the consumer really liked. And I just loved being part of the journey as they went from like super small to now seeing a lot of success. And I think it's such a unique way to approach, I don't know, I don't want to say honesty in business, but just like transparency of process because every CPG brand has for sure gone through those struggles where you're like, hey, well, now I have to order 15,000 of this product film impression, and that's super scary.
Yeah.
And you can relate to it. And the same goes, on the grocer side as well, right? They can see that they're putting in all this effort to show that it really does matter, these fine details to the consumers. And I think that's such a unique angle for it. Yeah.
I think Jay Carl's and that just that production mentality, the storytelling, they did a great job. Awesome, awesome
Yeah.
job. Yeah, and he's got
Not
a
my
great
skill set, but I
personality.
think he does a good job at
Yeah,
it.
yeah, the dancing, whatever. I love it. I'm like, you know
Yeah.
what? It's super unique. I think it's great. So on that
First
line,
trade show I went to, they had a megaphone and we're walking around the trade show, and I was like, "This is the first time I've seen that, but that's great, right? Like
the
nobody else is
flag,
doing this."
it's
Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
exactly.
totally. Yeah, no, they've done a great job. What if I looked in your pantry at home? Like, what kind of brands are you buying?
Yeah, love trying new stuff. Um, a lot of the things that I say will probably be local to where I am. So I'm in BC and Victoria. But I definitely am a bit of a frugal shopper. I don't know if that comes from my college days and trying to hunt for deals. And I worked in grocery, right out of college as well. So I got into the flyer shopping mentality. But I have a few favorite brands for sure. One, I think you probably only get here. It's called Oh So Mexi, I think. And it's essentially dried refried beans. And I find it cool because it's like a bit of a product innovation, but they're really, really good. And it's like awesome for camping. They can live in my pantry. You literally take a scoop of these beans, and you can heat them up on the stove, and it tastes just like better than any of the other
Huh,
refried beans I've purchased, at least here. Um, yeah, and so they're kind of a fun, tasty innovation, at least.
cool.
Another, I mean, there's a Mexico theme for sure in this, I guess. I think it's La Costina. I buy their like Chipotle's in adobo. I like making sauces and trying different things, so they've definitely been one. They're tough to find in Victoria, so I will actually go out of my way to go hunt them down and find their products because they're really good.
Nice. I like that. Hey,
Um,
you're talking, we're in Texas. I'm like, I love Tex-Mex and
yeah,
Mexican food. So
yeah,
yours is great.
exactly.
I
I
love
mean, we
that.
have Portofino. That's always my bread of choice. So they're literally just down the road from us, actually. I always kind of forget that their factory's
So
there,
good.
but
Bread is
we
so
can
good.
find them so good. And they kind of entered in a space that didn't really exist in grocery, in this like full artisan bread. And I found them. I was visiting my brother in Sacramento, and they have them at the store there. So, you can find it all over now.
They're
And
down the street, but you had
they
to find it in Sacramento.
Yeah, yeah, you can still find it here, but yeah, they've done well there. And then yogurt I get from it's called Tree Island Yogurt, and there's not a lot of new like companies that seem to enter that space. The dairy space clearly has a lot of barriers to entry for it, and they produce like 2 hours away from here. Tree Island Yogurt, it's amazing.
Hmm.
Really, really nice people. So that's kind of always our go-to kind of staples that we put into the fridge
Yeah, I love that.
or
It's
the
awesome.
pantry.
What's any career advice that you could give? Like a marketer who's coming in, you want to give them some career advice. What would be some pieces of advice?
Yeah, spend time with where the consumer sees the product. I think, go into a store, spend time looking at the shelves, understanding how products are displayed, and what draws your eyes and what doesn't. See what's new. The more you can spend time in that kind of consumer space, I think the better you'll understand it. Read reviews. I mean, people most often vote with their feet. They'll walk away from a product and try something out, something different if they didn't like it. But if they're willing to leave a review, take that to heart and see, maybe there's something there that's good or bad that can help inform, your decisions and things like that as well. So I think definitely getting in touch with that. Um, yeah,
Cool.
definitely connecting to the consumer side of things, I think is the most important. I mean, in CPG, I often say there's two customers as a CPG company. There's the buyer and there's the consumer. So definitely understand the difference between those. There are different value propositions for each, or different unique selling points that we would market for each of those. And so understand the difference. I think the consumer side is the most important because you can speak to that to the buyer. Hey, you should carry my product because consumers want this. This is in demand. There's a gap in your shelf. There's all these different kind of tools that we can use to prove why us. But then understand that they may have a totally different subset of needs they're looking for. They may want a B Corp or an eco-friendly company, or you're reducing your plastic that you're using in product. Those kind of needs that may be more important to the buyer necessarily than the consumer. Great if you can do all of it, but just adjust your messaging between the two.
Yeah, no, it's great. It's a great point. And just the last question I always have for all of our guests is, who's somebody that made an impact on you in your career, and what did you learn?
Yeah, oof. This probably goes quite a bit of way back. I only worked with this person for a short amount of time, but I worked in the analysis space for I'm trying to think of how to describe this. We analyzed samples, a lot of like US business. So you take a product, see what the chemical makeup was, etc. So not an industry that I spent a lot of time in, but I had a boss there who was the interim CEO. She flew back and forth once a week to spend time with the company and help it grow. But I learned so much early on in my career about tracking data, analytics, ROI, but also managing a dispersed sales team because we had reps all over North America at that point. Um, and yeah, the information that I was able to gather and learn from her was super, super valuable. It was an intense time because the company was transitioning, hence the interim CEO and all these things. But yeah, the knowledge was really, really valuable. And it allowed me to take that and apply those kind of formulas and really, really critical thinking moving forward because I was able to, learn how to measure success of marketing tactics more than anything, of like, what are we doing? Are we doing the right things? How can I prove and plan moving forward based on past?
Yeah, that's awesome. Oh man, Ben, this is so good. I can't I can't thank you enough for taking the time. Love seeing Level Ground Coffee. Just really, I would say, getting a leadership almost position now of where you guys are really that wave two, and I just can't wait to see more success in the future. So thanks so much for being on
Thank you.
and for sharing with us.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. All right. Well, if you're not a member yet of CPG Brand Builders, you got to sign up. It is awesome. It's a great community. And, we're going to have all these conversations all the time. So keep tuning in. Talk to you soon.